Hello and welcome everyone to the Varsity Tutors StarCourse series, where this week we celebrate Veterans Day, and that's why we are honored to have our friends from Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've got Tim and Mike here to talk to us about what a veteran is, what veterans do, and even take us through a tour. We can kind of get ourselves in the shoes virtually of a handful of veterans with some pretty amazing stories to really understand the kinds of decisions and things that they have to go through. Now, a couple things before I turn it over to Soldiers and Sailors. One, please keep it interactive. One of the hallmarks of today will be a game called What Would You Do, where you get inside those shoes, or I guess boots, of some of these veterans and think about their decisions. And we want to hear from you about what you might do in those situations. So throughout the session, they'll be asking some questions. Use the chat box to the right of the screen to answer those. And throughout the sessions, if you have any questions whatsoever about the stories we hear about or about significance of Veterans Day and other military holidays, feel free to type those in. In the last 10 minutes or so, I'll interview Tim and Mike with your questions so we can get you as many answers as we can. Also have a camera nearby. Toward the end, we're going to give everyone an opportunity to take a selfie live from Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, the way it's decorated for Veterans Day. And if you put that up on Instagram and tag Soldiers and Sailors and Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win a prize package that includes some free swag from Soldiers and Sailors and a spot in an after-school club with Varsity Tutors. So that's a lot to look forward to. So we might as well turn it over to not the stars of the show, the veterans are the stars of the show, but our hosts of the show, Tim and Mike from Soldiers and Sailors.
All right, thank you very much, Brian. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Neff, and I'm the Director of Museum and Education at Soldiers and Sailors. And as always, with me tonight is
Michael Kraus. I'm the curator here.
And as Brian said, this week is Veterans Day on Thursday, November 11th. Every year on November 11th, we honor veterans on Veterans Day. So we put together this class to talk about what it means to be a veteran. What does that word even mean to start with? Plus, we've got some great stories to share. So there's no better time really to stop and take a look and think about veterans, and if you know a veteran, thank them for their service than this week. And that's what we want to talk about today. So we have a couple different sections that we're looking at. We'll go through our class today. We'll start with just the basics. What is a veteran? What do they look like? Some of the misconceptions that people have about veterans. Then we're going to talk about some military awards and decorations. These are some of the medals that soldiers receive and different things, and we'll talk about what they mean and how important they are. And then a big part of tonight's program, as Brian mentioned, is our interactive part with What Would You Do? And we've got several stories here of veterans. Most of these are actually from the Pittsburgh area. That's where we are at Soldiers and Sailors in Pittsburgh. And they are stories of local men, but they're going to come to a point in the story where they're faced with a very difficult decision. And we're going to ask you guys out there, we want your input on what do you think you would do in that situation? And then we'll wrap up with a little bit about Soldiers and Sailors. There's our beautiful building where we are right now, Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum, as we said, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So let's just start off with kind of the easiest thing, where it all begins here. Simple enough. I'm going to throw it out to you guys. What is a veteran? Go ahead and type in some of your answers there. See if anybody has any ideas of what they think a veteran is.
There's probably a lot of different things.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of different perspectives.
We know there are.
Yeah, right. We hear a lot of different ones. We ask a lot of people this question, a lot of the students that come here. And I'm seeing a lot of great answers. We know it's related to the military. It's related to those that serve in the military, which is good. Yep. And we see that, these are people that are retired from the military. Yeah, that's very important. Yep. So that's going to play a big part of it. Yep. And, my dad is a veteran, that's great. We're going to ask a little bit more about people who have veterans in their families a little bit later. So yeah, you guys are really picking up a lot of the good answers here, but let's just start at the very basics. As it says here, veterans are those individuals who have served in the U.S. military. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means they served in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard. These are the different branches of the military, the different sections of it. And if you served in that and you finish up your service, you're honorably discharged, okay, or you retire from there and you come back to civilian life, you are considered a veteran. I think it's important to point out, as it says here on the slide, veterans do not have to serve in a war, all right? And they do not have to see combat.
That's right.
I think a lot of times when people think about people in the military, your first instinct is to think about them fighting on the front lines and engaging the enemy and things like that, what you see in the movies. But there are many, many more veterans that never see combat, never serve in a war, but are still considered veterans, still have important jobs, and still deserve, thanks and for their service. So I think it's just important to realize that all, the keys here are serving in the military, retiring from service, and coming home. And that's where you're considered a veteran. All right. So let's move on here. And what is a veteran? Misconceptions. What does a veteran look like? And I think this is important here because what we see is a lot of different people serve in the military. In fact, every type of person really does. Every race and religion and gender. At this point, they all play a role and have served in the military and are considered veterans. Now, that hasn't always been the case. No. There have been different times where some people were excluded from the military or people were segregated within the military, meaning they were serving apart from one another. But today, the military is completely integrated, all serving together as one. And as you could just see in those photos, you see a lot of different people coming home from their service.
Yeah, the military is kind of a proving ground, a testing ground. It initiated some of that desegregation and bringing women in. Those were all things that happened in the military.
Right. And kind of provided that opportunity to prove themselves and gain their respect. Not that they needed to do that, but in the public eye, it was a way to bring attention to that. And I always hearken it back, and I don't want to get too deep in the woods here, but to the Civil War. Frederick Douglass was a very famous abolitionist, and he said, if you allow the black man to serve in the army, you cannot deny his right to citizenship. Two things directly connected. Once you serve in the military and you kind of give of yourself to your country, how can your country deny you of your equal citizenship? Yeah, and we've seen that play out all throughout history with different groups.
So very important.
Yeah, coming here. So we looked at that. We're going to now talk a little bit about just the simple origins of Veterans Day. So now that we know what a veteran is, we want to talk about why do we have Veterans Day and what is that all about? So let's go back to the beginning. How does it get started?
Well, Veterans Day came out of the end of World War I. World War I ended on November 11th, 1918 at 11 o'clock in the day. This was a war where they got to a stage in the fighting and they both sides wanted to quit, and they picked a time and a day when it was going to quit. It's going to be over in that time. So the veterans who came home, and there were hundreds of thousands of them, were honored with a celebration called Armistice Day. It was originally called Armistice Day. And Armistice was the peace treaty.
Peace, right? Yeah. No more fighting.
No more fighting. Yep. That's right. Now, we should look and say there are two holidays that honor military: Veterans Day, Armistice Day, and that's for all veterans living,
all those that serve, just like we defined. Yep, just as we defined.
And the other is Memorial Day, and that only honors service personnel who were killed in action.
Right. And we actually did a class with Varsity Tutors about Memorial Day and talking about the meaning behind that and the origins behind that around Memorial Day of this year. So you can always go and look that up. But I think that is a very important distinction. Memorial Day is just for those that are fallen, that are killed, and Veterans Day is for all veterans, all those that served. And, as we said, it started with Armistice Day. And I think just want to point out, you said November 11th at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
That's 11, 11, 11. The 11th month, the 11th day, the 11th hour was what they chose to end World War I. And it was known as Armistice Day, which then eventually developed into what we know as Veterans Day today.
Yeah. And it stopped. There was fighting up to that point, and then it stopped.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to imagine.
Yeah, I know.
How it would work, but they can you imagine losing your life right in that last instance, right before the war ended?
It happened. Yes.
So that's what Veterans Day is, which we keep saying is coming up on Thursday. And, why is Veterans Day important? Well, as we have said along the way here, that this is an important time of year just to reflect upon all these veterans, their service to our country, what they've done for our country. Many of you probably know a veteran or have a veteran in your family. And this is just a time to take a moment, reflect upon their service, show appreciation if you know somebody, to actually say thank you, maybe attend a Veterans Day parade or a Veterans Day event. I know the Pittsburgh Veterans Day parade is a very big deal. Hopefully some of your communities do those things. Even if it's as simply as flying a flag on that day, it can be a show of appreciation for those that have served. That said, here at Soldiers and Sailors, we like to think Veterans Day is every day. So it never hurts to say thank you and to show your appreciation. But Veterans Day is a really good kind of marker to take time out and say that thanks and show that appreciation. And that's going to bring us to our next question, I believe, which is, do you have a veteran in your family? I've mentioned a couple times that I'm sure many of you do. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. I want to see who you have in your family. Is it mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, uncle, aunt, grandpa, cousins? And I'm seeing all of them come through.
Yeah, brother,
Yep, brother there.
another dad.
I know here in Western Pennsylvania, we're actually very densely populated with veterans, so you don't have to go very far. Now, that might not be the case in everywhere. And if you don't have a veteran in your family, that's completely fine. I don't have very many, to be honest, in my own family. But if you do, like I said, it's great to take a moment to thank you, and it never hurts to ask about their service.
Yeah, it's a way to ask.
Right.
This holiday is a way to ask.
And some of them might tell you, and I hear this all the time from a veteran, oh, I didn't do anything important, or I wasn't in a war, or, I didn't do this. But every job is important.
Sure.
And if everybody does their job, everything goes well. If you don't do your job, things don't go so well.
Sure, the guy who cooks a meal, the guy who puts oil in a Jeep.
Yeah, right.
The guy who cleans up the barracks, they're all important. They're all parts to make the machine go.
Right. And that's why it doesn't matter if they say, oh, I didn't do anything important. Ask them anyway. Say, I still would like to know, because there's still some pretty intriguing jobs. And I bet you they still have some good stories about their time in service. Okay, so I think we've covered that pretty well. We're going to move on now to some of the military awards and decorations. And once again, we're going to throw another question out to you. What are some military awards and or decorations that you have heard of? You see some examples down below there. What are some awards you can think of? If you've watched some of our classes, some of these should come up pretty well.
Yeah, there's some, I don't want to say common, but well-known.
Well-known, I think is a good way to go.
medals,
And I'm seeing one of them coming up right here, Purple Heart.
That is,
That is probably one, if not the most well-known one of them. And we did a class on that earlier this year. I'm also seeing Medal of Honor, which is another one we've talked about. We talked about the Medal of Honor last year for Veterans Day. We're going to talk about it a little bit more here.
Somebody put good conduct medal. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Not everybody's heard that one unless you know somebody who has it.
Right.
All right, good answers, guys. Yeah, we guys know a lot more than kind of we expected. So let's move on to the next part here. The Medal of Honor. I'm going to turn it over to Michael here to tell us a little bit about the Medal of Honor.
Sure. The Medal of Honor. Well, in all the medals and decorations that the United States military gives, many of them are for commendations for completing a class or some training, and others are for gallantry or bravery in battle or combat. So among those medals, the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Distinguished Service Cross, the top tier, the highest award our country gives is the Medal of Honor. And that is a medal that is recommended from a commander on the ground who sees one of his soldiers performing above and beyond the call of duty. Many times it's in severe combat conditions. Many times that soldier is wounded and refuses treatment and continues to do his job. And oftentimes that soldier is killed as a result of what happened. But his valor and heroism is so important and so inspiring that this soldier may get recommended for a Medal of Honor. And that medal, that recommendation goes all the way up the chain of command for approval. And once it's finally approved, it goes to Congress. And then Congress vets the medal and approves it. So the medal is actually given by Congress to a soldier. And that sometimes creates confusion in the name. People call it the Congressional Medal of Honor, but it is a Medal of Honor that is given by Congress. Mm-hmm. But it is for extreme bravery, right. And it is a coveted, respected medal, the highest one that our nation recognizes.
And we just happen to be sitting in front of four ones that we have in our collection right here behind us. Mm-hmm. So the Medal of Honor is kind of at the very top level, and it's very, very select bunch that gets that. But there are other medals of valor as well. And other medals of valor might include the Distinguished Cross, the Silver Star. Here we have some that we can see here, the Soldier's Medal, the Bronze Star. What are these all about?
Well, they're all gallantry, but they're just different degrees of gallantry, and you see them in the order that they come in. Of course, Medal of Honor would be on the extreme left, and second to that is Distinguished Service Cross. A soldier might be very close to the description of the action, very close to what a Medal of Honor award would be, but it just doesn't go that extra bump. You know, like maybe he wasn't killed, or maybe he didn't take out a machine gun nest, but it's a very, very coveted medal. Silver Star is also a gallantry medal. Again, maybe not as high up, not as many factors in it as the Medal of Honor. Soldier's Medal is a medal that a soldier is awarded that saves another soldier's life, directly saves a soldier's life.
And that can be during a war or not during.
That's
that
right.
can be just, in a training accident or something like that.
Or a soldier slips into the river bathing there and almost drowns, and somebody saves them. That would be a soldier's medal. And the Bronze Star, that's the initiation into the valor medals. There are a lot of Bronze Stars that are awarded. Certainly it is a gallantry medal. It just doesn't rank up to the status of a Distinguished Service Cross or a Medal of Honor.
Right. And just to clarify one more time, I know Mike basically said this, but it's basically in the face of the enemy.
Yeah.
These are things other than that one little caveat with the soldier's medal where you maybe save somebody's life. These other medals all are things that you're doing in the face of the enemy, in service, combat, in service to your country. Okay, and then we have another kind of tier. Then the next tier is the Purple Heart, which, as we said, is probably the most famous medal, but not necessarily a Medal of Valor. What does the Purple Heart represent?
Well, again, this is a medal that's given in the face of the enemy. It has to be in the face of the enemy to a soldier who was wounded in action. So gunshot. It's not a broken leg or an accident, but actual. Wounding by a grenade, a rifle, something similar to that. The medal was established in 1932, but it was retroactive to the First World War. The First World War ended in 1918. But in 1932, which was George Washington's 200th birthday, the military decided to make a medal in honor of him that would be given for those soldiers who had been wounded in action. So they went back through the records of the World War I soldiers who were still living. At that point, it was only living. Right. And they were awarded the Purple Heart. Now today, the Purple Heart is given to soldiers who are killed in action or wounded.
Right. So there's a very good chance that if you got a Medal of Honor or a Silver Star and you got wounded in that action, you would also get the Purple Heart.
You'll have this little cluster of medals that kind of go together. That
being said, if you get a Silver Star for an action, that can get upgraded to another medal, but that doesn't mean you still have the Silver Star. Am I correct?
No, they upgrade it. I don't think you have it anymore.
I think
it's the same action.
It's the same action. So it just depends on what level you get to. Whereas the Purple Heart does stay with you as long as you were wounded in that action.
Now, if you were wounded more than once in different actions, you got a little pin on it. That's a little oak leaf.
Right. I think we saw that on that last slide there. We had one medal that had a couple of those oak leaf clusters on there. Yep.
Yeah, they're little oak leaves, and that each one of those signifies a wound. And I know we saw that picture, but they're the one in the center. You see two large oak leaves. That signifies two wounds, and the medal itself is a wound.
Right.
So do your math, everybody.
Right,
that's three.
That's three Purple Hearts for that one individual there, which is a story we told at the Purple Heart class a little bit earlier in this year. And then there's one more tier underneath that, which are kind of what you're just throwing in as additional medals here. These are, still important, but a lot more common. There's campaign medals, and I'll let you talk a little bit about these.
Yeah, they're campaign medals. For instance, the one on the left is the European theater campaign. So if you saw somebody wearing that, you would know they were in World War II in the European theater. The second one is a victory medal for World War I. It was given to all soldiers who served during the war and during the time of active combat, but may not have been in combat. They may have been stateside, but they did receive a victory medal. The other medals you see can be in different variations in different service branches. So these are good conduct medals which are given usually after training is completed and the soldier performs well and didn't have any demerits or act out or whatever. And you see the Army pattern, good conduct, the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Air Force, and is that the
Coast Guard?
Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's hard to see.
Yeah.
So same idea, but different branches. And the same is a little similar in some of the higher medals. A Purple Heart is always a Purple Heart. The Medal of Honor has different branch patterns too. There's a Navy pattern, and an Army pattern, and an Air Force pattern.
And you see those, what we call the ribbons on top of there. Those each are represented with a little square ribbon that soldiers wear on their chest. And that's why you see the soldiers with a full, some of these guys that have a whole chest load of ribbons. And they go in from the importance. So if you had a Medal of Valor, it would be at the top and it would work its way all the way down to some of these medals that would be along the bottom there.
Right. It's a whole storyboard.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at, that I think is so fascinating. Once you crack that code or have a book to help you crack the code, you can really learn a lot about a soldier's service just from the different medals that they've been awarded. So that's a little bit about these medals. I think it's, like I said, important to take a moment to reflect upon those. And some of the stories we're going to hear are about individuals that receive some of these medals. And that's where we are now. We're going to look at what would you do? We're going to put you guys in the shoes of these veteran heroes, and we're going to ask what you would do in their situation. These are just some of the examples here. I think we have a total of 8 or so different stories. So I'm going to get it to a point of the story, and I'm going to stop. And I'm going to ask you guys in that moment, what would you do? Now, don't try to guess too far ahead. Try to really be, serious here and think about how difficult this situation is. This is real life. In most of these cases, literally life and death. And what kind of decision could you make under those circumstances?
At a critical moment,
right?
What would you do?
Right. So let's go ahead and pull up our first one here. And just to set the stage here, this is Major George McMurtry. He received the Medal of Honor. He was in the Army, and this is in World War I. So October 2nd to the 8th, 1918, which that's getting pretty close to the end of the war. Over. Yeah, like you said earlier.
November.
Yeah, we're talking almost a month later, the war is going to be over. But in this case, McMurtry was wounded 2 times, both on October 4th in the knee, on an October 6th in the shoulder. His unit is cut off. They become actually known as the Lost Battalion. They're completely cut off from communications, which means they're surrounded by the Germans. And they're in great danger at that situation. That's probably the worst situation you can be in. And at that time in World War I, one of the only ways to communicate, especially in this position when you're cut off, is through carrier pigeons. So they're down to 2 carrier pigeons. What would you do in this situation?
You're surrounded. You only have two little vehicles, and they're birds.
Yeah, right.
Birds with that you tie a little note onto their foot.
And we should say that they had other pigeons that went and never came back. So they're down to their last 2. What would you do? I mean, I think surrender is an option at that point. I mean, realistically, there's not, try to break through and throw everything you have. Throw everything you have at one last thing. Hide. Right. That might not be bad. And I'm seeing a lot of these answers coming up here, you guys. And I'm seeing some brave answers that you'd fight out of it. And I see people saying, of course, send out those last 2 carrier pigeons. I think that's at least the least you could do, is hope for the best with your last 2 carrier pigeons.
That's the tools that you have.
Right. But in this case, McMurtry actually continued to command his troops and keep a morale high, which is so important because, once morale starts to dip, that's when surrender becomes more of an issue. And he keeps the men together. He keeps encouraging them. He keeps morale high. And they send out these last 2 pigeons, as we said, and 1 pigeon does get through. And this pigeon was known as cher ami, which is French for dear friend. And it got through actually wounded. So the pigeon actually got wounded, but it got the message out. And after 6 days, finally, friends came to the rescue, because now that people knew where they were, that they were not lost anymore. The pigeon got the message out,
But
And-
imagine McMurtry may not have known that the pigeon got
No,
back.
and this is 6, you've sent those pigeons out and you've waited 6 days.
Yeah.
I think, and then food is running
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and, you know, you're,
Ammunition,
and-
you're cold, it's October.
yep.
Yeah.
And McMurtry receives the Medal of Honor mainly for his leadership, for his ability to keep his men
Inspiration.
together. Yeah, keep the men calm, keeping morale high, as I said, and just not giving up.
Yeah.
And it would have been very, very easy to
Yeah.
give up in that situation. So let's move on to the next one. So this is Colonel Mitchell Page. He received the Medal of Honor in the United States Marine Corps on October 26, 1942. So now we're in the Pacific in
Yes.
World War II. So out in the Pacific theater fighting against the Japanese. And it's the Battle of Guadalcanal. And the enemy broke through the line directly in front of his unit. And Sergeant Page continued direct fire from his gunners until everyone around him was killed or wounded. What would you do?
Everybody's killed or wounded.
You're by yourself.
Yeah.
I know what I would think of doing right away is run.
Yeah.
Now
Save
he's not
yourself.
he's
Yeah.
not surrounded, so he
Yeah.
could literally turn around
Yeah.
and run, and
He could've- he could've.
nobody would blame him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's all by himself. What is he going to do? You know, he could stay and fight and
Yeah.
continue to, you know, fire.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing some people
Yeah.
taking that. He could surrender, I guess.
Yeah. He didn't have any pigeons.
Yeah, exactly. Right. He's got no way, nobody to communicate to.
Yeah, right.
He's all by himself. And once again, seeing a lot of brave answers here. And I'm seeing some people that I think are being honest that,
Yeah.
you know, you might just want to
Yeah.
get out of there. I don't,
Yeah, like
I'm-
you said, nobody would hold that against you.
right. I mean, you're in an impossible, what certainly seems to an insurmountable, impossible situation.
Especially, you know, everybody around you has been killed.
Yeah,
All your friends.
all your friends you've watched die all around you. Well, Mitchell Page actually does something very unique, and it's pretty amazing in the quick thinking. He fires everything he's got off his machine gun. Then he moves from one machine gun to the next, firing bullets from each gun. And what that does is it essentially kind of holds the enemy back for a split second because they see guns, different guns firing. So they don't know he's alone.
Yeah.
So in a way, he kind of tricks them. And we're talking just milliseconds here, but it's just buying time. And he bought enough time for reinforcements to arrive.
Yeah.
And they come
And
through.
that turned the tide of that fight.
Mhm.
They were successful.
And the reinforcements arrived and they break through the German lines. And exactly as Michael said, that changed the whole tide. So that's quick second split thing.
Resourceful. You could not plan that. It
Right.
just happens in the stroke of a second. You think, I'll go to that gun, then I'll go to this gun. And, you know, maybe they'll think there's more people here.
Right. So Mitchell Page is a pretty amazing story. There's actually a G.I. Joe made about Mitchell Page. And he is a pretty amazing person. And I actually had the honor of meeting him. He's the only Medal of Honor recipient that I've ever met. And it was truly a great honor when I first started working here at Soldiers and Sailors. Okay, we're going to move on. And you know what? If you haven't noticed, my voice is give me a little trouble. I'm going to let Mike do this one. He's very familiar with this
Yeah,
story,
sure.
and I'll let him take this one away.
This is Technical Sergeant William W. Farrenhold. He was on a bomber in May of 1943. This is before D-Day, and the Allies were bombing Germany, softening up targets. And while returning from a mission over enemy territory, occupied enemy territory, his plane was hit by enemy fire several times. In fact, it caught fire. It was on fire, and on the 2 men were wounded in the crew, and the oxygen system was shot out. Now that's important because you're flying at an altitude where you have to have oxygen, and when you don't have that oxygen, you have to fly lower, and then you are vulnerable to enemy aircraft. So they had dropped their bombs. They got shot up. They're on their way back. They're on fire. As they cross over the English Channel to come back. Now, these men on this plane, they'd been in combat for a while. They'd flown many missions, and they had seen other aircraft on fire, and they knew what could happen. And that generally was the aircraft would just break apart and fall, and the whole crew would be lost. So you're on this plane, it's on fire, and you have a choice. Do you stick around or do you go? 3 crewmen on his plane jumped out with their parachutes. They jumped out. So here's Farrenhold and a few other members of the crew, the pilot, another gunner. What would you do?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, you've got this decision to make. You've seen guys jump out. You can take your chances in the ocean
Yeah.
and try to survive that way.
Maybe get picked up.
Right. But, you also have wounded crewmen on the plane as well
right.
that you want to look out for. And you
Yeah.
could, so really this is either you jump out or you risk it, you gamble it, and you stay on the plane and do
Yeah.
what you can to survive and get
Right.
the plane to safety.
Right.
And once another situation where you couldn't blame anybody for anything.
Jumping, yeah.
Exactly.
You might want to just get out of there.
Right. It's on, the plane is literally on fire.
And you've been trained to jump, you know what to do,
Right.
you'd have some confidence that you could be okay.
Mhm. So I'm seeing a lot of both directions here. Stay on the plane and try to get it to safety, or jump out. And I'm seeing answers on both ends of the spectrum here. All right. And as we know, what happened?
Well, Farrenhold did not jump. He and a tail gunner spent an hour and a half trying to get the flames out, beating them with clothing, pouring water on them, stamping out with blankets. At any moment, that plane could have broken apart, or the cables that ran back and forth that operate the tail, the tail and the rudders, they could have gotten too hot and snapped, and that would be certain doom as well. They fought that fire and got it out, and they were able to land the plane. Now, the 3 crew members that bailed out, they were gone. They did not survive. And Farrenhold was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his action in saving the plane. The other man on the plane, the tail gunner, was awarded the Medal of Honor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was a crew of heroes that, made a very difficult decision. And we're very lucky to have
Yeah.
some of his items.
We
right?
have his medal, and he also, on a mission before that, had a watch in his pocket. In one of the missions, the plane was shot up, and a piece of shrapnel went through his pants and dented the watch. And we have that watch.
Right. So another amazing story. I mean, all these stories are just amazing, heroic stories. And once again, there's no wrong answers here.
No. What would you do?
Yeah, exactly. You just, and we're talking about seconds. I mean, you don't have time to sit down and weigh the pros and the cons. You have to make a decision as quickly as possible. Okay, next one here. Motor Machinist Mate, Second Class David E. McCusker. He was rewarded the Silver Star in the United States Navy in 1945, May 4th. And once again, he's in the Pacific, like Mitchell Page was earlier. And his support ship in Okinawa was hit by 3 kamikaze planes, leaving him with several painful burns and wounds as he tried to escape the engine room. He's actually in the engine room. He's burning. There's other fellow sailors that are burning. And maybe before we go any further, can you tell us what a kamikaze plane is?
Yeah, the Japanese forces in the attempt to damage American ships as much as they could were using their fighter planes as bombs. There would be a bomb strapped to the bottom of the plane, and these pilots were sacrificing their own lives, and they were driving the planes directly into the ships.
Right. So this is a big time damage. This is
it's
definitely
scary.
definitely going to probably, if not sink the ship, make the ship useless at a point. And it's burning. He's in the engine room. What would you do? So
McCusker, he may have witnessed other ships being hit by kamikaze planes too. He knows what's happening.
Yeah, he knows that
they're on fire,
Mhm.
and they're in trouble. And it's almost the end of the war. See
Right.
that date? Almost the end of the war.
Another one that
Yeah.
if he could have held on a little bit longer, the war would have been over.
But what's he going to do?
Yeah.
What would you do?
I mean, your instinct is to run. Get out of there and get off the
Get
ship
as far
and
away from the
save
fire
yourself.
as you can. Yeah.
But you have to realize, I think it would be pretty obvious there'd be other people that are wounded around you.
Your friends.
Yep.
Maybe your bunkmate or your messmate.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying just, get out and jump in the water. And that's certainly what most people on the ship would be doing, and get to safety as quickly as possible. But McCusker actually remains in the room until the last man was evacuated. So he stepped up and said, I'm going to be here until the last man. And then once he is in the water, after the order to abandon ship was given, he rescued a wounded shipmate who had been swept in the water, under the water from a life raft. So not only does he remain on the ship to the last moment possible, making sure others are to safety, he gets in the water and then saves another sailor who had been swept under there. So
what medal did he get?
He was the Silver Star.
Silver Star.
Yeah. So these are just amazing stories. And once again, these split-second decisions and the selflessness.
Yeah.
That's what we keep seeing here,
Yeah.
really. In reality, we're seeing this
Yeah.
selflessness that, if you're following along and really following closely, you could probably start to get idea where some of these stories are going, because these are individuals that gave of themselves to save others, to get a job done, whatever that may be. Okay, our next one. Lieutenant Commander Dane V. Scott, Distinguished Flying Cross in the United States Navy, August 21st, 1967. So now we're into the Vietnam War. And he is flying an airplane or in an aircraft, and during an extremely dangerous daylight strike against a heavily defended railroad yard, he sustains heavy fire. He navigated the plane within 8 miles of the target when it is now really significantly damaged. What would you do?
You're over enemy territory.
Yeah.
You have a severely damaged plane.
Right. So
Yeah.
you could jump out and take your chances,
chances, yeah.
in enemy territory.
Yeah.
You could immediately turn around and try to get to fly that plane as long as possible for, to get to safety.
Limp back.
Right.
Limp your way back.
But as you can imagine, there's also the option of continuing on to your target and finishing your job.
Yeah.
And that's, you're getting this theme here. All right. But really, what would you do? I mean, if you
have these options, and what do you even have time to think?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
You just do.
And of course, your training would kick in, and you'd have to assess how bad is the damage. How far do you think is are you leaking gas?
Yeah.
These kind of things would all probably be registering through here. And we've certainly got some brave viewers tonight, because I'm seeing a lot of people saying you continue on. I'm seeing some people say you fly to safety. Or even jump out. I mean, there is no wrong answers here.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's a plane that was equipped with an ejector seat. So you pull the canopy back and boom, you blow the seat out.
Yep. And he at least lands safely. Now
in enemy territory.
What your fate is from there, you don't know. But in this case, in the face of great danger, Scott and his pilot decided to continue their mission. The decision contributed to a highly successful attack, which inflicted major damage to the vital North Vietnamese transportation facility. So here they are, they risked it all.
Yeah.
They knew they needed to get this railroad down by disrupting transportation in North Vietnam. That's going to be a big, big advantage. They had to get that job done. So they risked it, and they flew and were able to damage it enough to have a successful bombing mission. So just more amazing stories here.
I'm seeing this theme over and over again.
Yeah, right. All right, our next one here. Corporal Bruce Wagner, Silver Star, United States Army, June 19th, 1970. So we're now we're still in Vietnam War, I should say. Serving as a pathfinder. Well, let's make sure we know what a pathfinder is. That's a guy with a parachute that jumps in. There he is in his photo there. He's got a parachute on, ready to jump out. So he's down on the ground. He's parachuted out. He's directing troop and cargo helicopters. Under attack, while the security forces took cover, he was exposed and continued to direct aircraft out of the area. One helicopter was hit and crashed, throwing 2 crew and trapping 2 in the wreckage. What would you do? So here he is on the ground, directing completely exposed, being shot at. A lot of people have already run and taken cover. So that's an option. You go and join them and take cover. You continue to direct and do what you can in this position you're currently in. Or you've just seen now this helicopter go down. What do? Do you just, try to call for help from somebody else?
Yeah.
Do you go over there and try to do something yourself? What would you do?
Yeah, you're under fire. And a helicopter is a big machine.
Yes, right.
Yeah, it's a big machine.
And just because he saw a wreckage and a helicopter go down, he has no idea if they're even alive.
Right.
And so going over there to save them could be all for nothing, and you could get killed in that action.
Sure.
So really, kind of in my brain, I think a lot of times the logical side's taking over, and I'm thinking, well, it would just make sense to go take cover.
Yeah.
But
somebody else do it. Or let's wait till it gets a little quieter and then we'll go check it out.
But once again, here these guys are trained. They're a part of a family, a brotherhood with one another. And Wagner runs approximately 100 meters through bursting mortar rounds, which knocked him off his feet twice to pull the unconscious pilot and co-pilot from the aircraft. Only after ensuring the safety of all the crew members did he finally seek cover. So he risked it. He got knocked off his feet from mortar rounds 2 times, He gets to the wreckage, pulls them to safety. They are alive.
Yeah.
And he gets finally at that moment decides to take cover. So, just amazing.
What kicked in there.
That just told him,
yeah.
I have to do this.
Yeah,
This is what I have to do. And he probably didn't know those two guys.
Yeah, they could have been dead.
Yeah.
Or he didn't know them,
Yeah.
of course, but they might not have been living, and that would have been
All for nothing,
tough.
once again. Yep. Okay, next one. I'm going to let you do this one, Michael. I'm going to give my voice a little break here.
This is Staff Sergeant Devon Booker. He got a Distinguished Service Cross for action in Iraq in April of 2003. And this is in the opening moments of the war there. And he was leading a task force. He was part of a task force. He was leading some armored vehicles when his platoon came under heavy fire. He communicated to command and encouraged his crew to return fire. And while firing his tank-mounted machine gun, he's up above, he's firing this machine gun. The machine gun malfunctions. Yeah. He's in the command. He's got a task force. He's communicating. They're rolling in a huge invasion. What would you do?
What would you do in this situation? So, yeah, as Mike said, this is 2003 Operation Iraqi Freedom, the early parts of it. And he's just in this situation where he's in charge.
Yeah.
So he's got to take the lead here. But when I know the first thing you do is probably say a few choice words that we're certainly not going to repeat here. But I'd imagine you could go down inside the tank and just try to command from there. You could jump out and try to command from the ground somehow.
See if you could fix the gun.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you guys do?
Yeah.
I'm seeing some of those answers come through. And of course, there is the other option, that not to give it away, but you do have your own gun, so maybe you take your own rifle out, and I've seen some people say that, so I'm okay, kind of repeating that maybe you start firing your own rifle, not the gun that's mounted on the tank that doesn't work, but your own gun. And in fact, as you can imagine, that is what Booker does. But he actually, in order to do that, he has to get out of the tank and lay down on top of it.
Yeah.
He can't fire, he lays down on top of the tank with his own rifle, with his personal weapon, and he protects the flank of the platoon with it.
He's very effective at using his weapon. Yeah.
In fact, he knocks out a troop carrier, a vehicle that's carrying enemy troops. He knocks that out and prevents them from kind of taking the flank. And he's at this time also still directing everybody and still making calls and still pointing out other enemies that need to be targeted. So he's really leading
so many things that are happening.
This and not quitting and showing, this determination to get through this situation. And unfortunately, while he's laying there, he is mortally wounded and he is killed. Yeah. And
so he was originally awarded a Silver Star for his action. And we talked earlier about upgrading. And that's exactly what happened to Sergeant Booker. His case was reviewed. It took a long time.
Yeah, it took years. I mean, because we're talking, what was that, just 2 or 3 years ago that they had the upgrade ceremony here at Soldiers and Sailors.
So it's almost 15 to 20 years that the paperwork was kind of bogged down, and they upgraded him to a Distinguished Service Cross. And that ceremony was held here. Yep.
And his family was here. We got to meet his family, and we always like to share his story because once again, it's kind of personal to us, and especially from knowing his mom and hearing fellow soldiers that were here. I mean, that was so powerful.
The men that were with him were here. They were talking
about how heroic this
he was still alive. They were just talking about, we learned a lot of little things about him that were fascinating.
Right. Okay. And then we've got one more here, and this is Specialist Ross Andrew Mcguinness, Medal of Honor, U.S. Army, December 4th, 2006. So this is also Iraqi freedom. And while serving as a machine gunner in a Humvee vehicle, so kind of like the tank, but he's up top with the machine gun.
Turret on the top.
Yep. A grenade is thrown by the enemy and it falls through the hatch. He yells grenade, allowing for all the members of his crew inside of the vehicle to prepare for the blast. What would you do?
Okay, you're up on top.
Yep.
The grenade just went right by you and right in. And you've warned you've done what you're supposed to do.
you very easily could
Yeah.
jump out and be
Oh.
completely safe. And
You
I think that's
You have a moment to be safe.
what most people in this situation would
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But of course, as we've kind of learned,
Medal of
these
Honor.
guys are
Yeah.
going in a different direction from where most individuals would do and from what most people would say. And I'm actually seeing some people that are picking up on exactly what he does.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't jump out, he yells grenade, and he takes in that split second, that moment, to fall down on top of the grenade.
Yeah, because in the vehicle,
Right.
he covers the grenade with his
Right.
body.
And he's got a body armor on, which it's going to explode. That armor's not enough to protect him, but it helps, muffle the
Yeah,
blast.
contain the blast. In the
Right.
vehicle. Other soldiers were injured,
Right.
but
The other four crew did survive. And it was only because of that split second decision of Ross Andrew Mcguinness falling down on top of the grenade and giving his life to save his fellow soldiers.
he knew what would
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, exactly. There was no, expectation that I had going to survive this.
No,
It was just, I have to do this to save the other four. I saw the grenade. I know exactly
Yeah.
where the grenade is. I am the one that can
Yeah.
save these guys.
yeah,
And this is another situation where we've gotten to meet family
Yes.
and other soldiers and kind of talked about, well, he wasn't like this gung ho soldier.
No.
He was kind of a clown. They
Yeah.
said the class
Mhm.
clown and just a kid. He was just
Yeah.
out of high school.
yeah.
But in that split second, he made that decision that saved lives and is a hero and
Yeah.
received the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
And
He really gave up his life for his crew.
right. And there was a phrase we use a lot here, and I'll use it here to kind of wrap this up here, is ordinary citizens during extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
So these are just he was a regular kid just out of high school that found himself in this crazy situation, just like a lot of these guys, and made these decisions that saved lives, got jobs done.
Mhm.
And, you can't be thankful enough for their
Right.
service.
Yeah.
So really good job, guys. You guys, first of all, I can see we have a lot of brave people. I'm wondering how many of you individuals might
Yeah.
be interested in going into the military.
Or
Because
even in, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
even in your regular life, just doing something that inspires people.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that comes up. I'm glad you said that because that comes up. There's always this language that explains why they got the medal. And a lot of times just
Yes.
being an inspiration is a part of it. So you think about McMurtry in that
Yeah.
first story being an inspiration.
Yeah.
Booker is clearly an inspiration during that engagement to the fellow soldiers. They see him
Yeah.
putting his life out there and
Yeah.
risking his life. And many of these stories
Yeah.
that's a big part of it is being an inspiration to others
Yeah.
that witnessed what happened here. So good job, guys, with what would you do? That's going to bring us to our last section here, a little bit about Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall and Museum in Pittsburgh. You see the outside of our building, you see the big banquet hall we have, and we see some of our exhibits in our halls. This building was built back in 1910, and today it stands as a memorial that honors all men and women who served from the Civil War all the way through present day. And our collection is filled with thousands and thousands of artifacts donated to us by veterans and their families that we use basically to tell their stories, just like we've done today. And it's an amazing place to work. Anything else you'd like to add as my voice starts to go one more time?
You threw that one at me. No, we do. You said it before. We honor veterans every day. That's why we're here. So even though there is a day set aside for it on our national calendar, at Soldiers and Sailors, we do it every day. And we're so proud to do that. And we learn so much from these veterans, their families, their stories. And then we hope to pass it on and share it with people like you.
Right. So, we want to thank you all and encourage you all. If you're in the Pittsburgh area ever, come see us. We've got lots of great stuff and we are open to the public Monday through Saturdays, 10 to 4. We have programming available. We have virtual programming. If you can't come to us, you could visit our website to learn about other programs that we offer through our virtual offerings that we call actually our Spotlight On program. That highlights different stories and things from our collection. So we encourage you to visit our website, learn more, maybe come visit us sometime.
Hey, Thank you guys so much for telling these stories tonight. I know one of the other reasons to visit Soldiers and Sailors is these stories are, some of many that you're able to tell and showcase out there. So for folks who have an opportunity to go visit, please do. These were, some great stories, but I don't even, you would say some of the best stories. There's so many amazing stories out there. Couple things for those who can't get to Pittsburgh right away. We do want to give everybody an opportunity to take a selfie with the museum as it's decorated for Veterans Day. We got a great picture of that from how it was decorated last year. So you can do that and put that on your social media to be entered to win the contest we have here. We also know we're a little bit over time. You guys have been asking some great questions. We'll get a couple of answers there in just a second. So if you guys have those cameras ready, we're going to go back full screen to Soldiers and Sailors here and give everybody about 10 seconds to grab this Veterans Day photo. And then from there, we'll get into your questions. So we get off screen here for you here, and we'll let everybody get those pictures. All right. Hopefully everyone got some great pictures to be able to share out there. Again, if you upload that Instagram tag, Soldiers and Sailors and Varsity Tutors, you'll be entered to win that prize package. We'll have a little more info about that at the end, along with those official handles. But really, those stories are such a hard act to follow. So it's sort of anything seems a little trite after hearing some of those stories. Thank you guys for sharing those. We did have some pretty great questions here. I want to make sure we get a couple of them answered if you guys have a moment. One, and I'm thinking about Sergeant Booker and Mcguinness. For those who are awarded these distinguished medals or upgraded eventually, but they themselves didn't make it. People wanted to know, is there a process to make sure that those medals go to their family? How is that determined? Since we did see some stories of that happening.
Go ahead, dude.
Yeah, the families are the recipients when a soldier receives a medal in that caliber. And for like for Booker, we had the family here, and there was this wonderful, beautiful, traditional Army ceremony with generals and honor guard, and they presented the medal on it was on a cushion pillow, right, to the family, and the Medal of Honors are presented to the family, and many times that's done by the president,
right.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's to their parents or to, a wife or something like that. And there's a word that you use for that is called posthumously. It's awarded posthumously, which means post-death, after the soldier has died in that action, but it's awarded posthumously to his family. Yeah.
Even other medals will go to the family, but
maybe not with a ceremony,
right? Not with a
ceremoniously.
That's great, and especially to make sure the family gets to have that remembrance, and it's really neat to know that you guys have been involved in some of those. Another question about those medals. I know a lot of folks were saying, as you asked, do you have a veteran in your family? We even saw some great stories about those. A lot of veterans are here right now, and thank you to all of you. A lot of folks like me were saying, it's really our grandparents. I mentioned you guys, McCusker, his naval photo looked just like my grandfather's photo, and that kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit. For folks who have won medals long ago, and maybe have moved house a few times or those kind of things. Is there any process? What happens if medals get lost along the way somehow? They're, put in a drawer somewhere and kind of forgotten about. I guess two-part question. People want to know what happens to lost medals over time. And is there any way to know for some of our older relatives that may have been veterans, what medals they may have won or things that we may be able to track down or at least sort of be proud of knowing that they were awarded?
Yeah, that certainly does happen all the time. Medals get misplaced, things like that. There are different avenues that you can try to go through to get medals replaced or get information about service. It's not very easy sometimes. There's the National Archives Veterans Chapter that's based out of St. Louis. They have a website that you can go and request information from there. A lot of times actually through local politicians, they have a veteran liaison position, maybe a local congressman or something like that has somebody that's on their staff that only deals with veteran issues. And they can help you kind of, put in the paperwork to try to get a new medal or find out more about a specific individual. So there are some avenues, but it takes some work and some due diligence. And sometimes it just can't be done. Records are lost. Records were lost in a fire in St. Louis, things like that.
Soldiers are entitled to 2 sets of medals.
Okay.
One initially is when they get out of the service. Now they don't always pick them up. Sometimes they exit the service without getting their medals. But in current times, from World War II on, what's important if you're looking for a family member's medals is to have a form that was given to them when they got out called a DD 214, Department of Defense Form 214. And on that form, it'll list the medals that they were to receive. If you know the medals they were to receive, you can, like Tim said, go to your Congress office or Veterans Affairs and try to get a replacement set. Or if you know which ones they are and they're not, you can't buy a Medal of Honor, but
Right.
you can actually buy many of the medals on some websites that if you want to replace them. But if you're a veteran, you are entitled to 2 sets. So you might try that avenue.
And there's one thing I also just want to point out while we're talking about this, and I'm going to call you out, Brian. I'm sorry, but you mentioned winning medals. And I wanted to mention this during the class, so I'm kind of glad it came up here, but you don't really win the medals. I know it sounds kind of trivial. It's just a word, but it's not supposed to be used that way. You earn a medal, you receive a medal. It's not the lottery. It's not a game.
It's not a contest.
So I'm only speaking from experience because when I first started working here, I made that mistake and was explained to by a veteran that that's not how that works. So I've really had to work at and I try my best to share with other people that you don't say that you actually win the medal.
I think you noticed I tried to correct it as soon as it came out of my mouth. I knew I'd made a mistake. So thank you for clarifying. I think that is really important. This isn't necessarily something people go out and seek. They're ordinary citizens in extraordinary circumstances. They earn it, but it's not like a 100-meter dash or anything like that. So I really appreciate that. Couple questions coming in. People wanted to be reminded of where you guys are located. It's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You mentioned basically on the campus of the University of Pitt. So we've got that. I think a last one for you. I think for all of us here, it's humbling and just almost you're proud, but also you feel kind of sad and a little bit like you could have done more as you read listen to some of these stories. What's the best way to say thank you? You listen to some of these stories and you realize like thank you isn't quite enough. As we've got a couple of days until Veterans Day. What's for those of you who live Veterans Day basically every day, what advice do you have for those of us who feel a little bit humbled hearing these stories?
I think is one thing you can do is just ask about service. Not every veteran wants to talk about their service, but just being interested and wanting to learn about what they experienced is one thing you can do. I know one thing that we've done here is there are a lot of veterans who need long-term care and they spend a lot of the rest of their lives in a hospital, to be quite honest, long-term care. And we do a lot of, making cards for those kind of facilities, thank you cards, hand-drawn cards. And you'd be really surprised how far that can go. When I go to drop them off, maybe we have a day at the museum where we have people come and make little cards and I take them to the facility and they pass them out to these veterans. And, I've actually seen them, they have them in their rooms, on the wall and things like that. So that's something else you can do. It a lot of times, some of those individuals don't, have family maybe that even comes to see them. So it's just a little token of thanks that can go a long way. And then, I certainly don't want to be somebody that tells you what to do with your money, but there are a lot of very, positive foundations and organizations and charities out there that help veterans that are in need. We know that homeless veterans is a serious problem and there's a lot of issues that veterans face.
Suicide.
And I think that's something, if you wanted to really go above and beyond, is do some research, find out what really means a lot to you, and maybe make a donation to an organization like that does a lot for that veteran community.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that advice. Going through this, I think we all realize we don't say thank you quite enough. To all the veterans out there watching this, a huge thank you to all of you for your service. For those of you with veterans in your families, please pass that along from all of us at Varsity Tutors and Soldiers and Sailors. Tim and Michael, thank you guys so much for another amazing presentation. This is basically the 1-year anniversary of What Would You Do? We did this last year. I think we'll continue to do it. I know a lot of people out there had questions about other things, or even had heard like, wait a second, you mentioned you did this in another class. This is part of a series. These guys will be back with some more classes on other military holidays and occasions and decorations. And, we broke down military uniforms and all those kinds of things. So if you didn't get your questions answered, rest assured we're tracking those and planning toward future classes. So thanks for all of your questions, participation. Thanks to you guys for your expertise. Thanks to all the veterans out there. We'll leave you with the instructions to be able to enter the photo contest and with our best wishes for Happy Veterans Day, and welcome to come back and visit us soon. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.